good evening, and welcome to the Albany Power 100 event. I'm Zach Williams, Senior State Politics Reporter at City and State. Very great event that we have. I'm so excited. So much going on in state politics. And of course, it's just been one heck of a year with the pandemic and so many other things going on. And we only have 2 days left of the legislative session. Before we jump right into this great event and start hearing from our keynote speakers, I would like to thank our wonderful sponsor, Spectrum. We couldn't have put on this wonderful event without them. In lieu of audience applause, I'll just give a little clap. Thank you so much, Spectrum. And I'm going to rush right into it because we got a very, very special keynote speaker straight from the assembly floor. You know, this event is all about power in state politics, who really knows how to navigate all the ways to make a big idea into a state law. And here to tell us a little something about that is none other than Assembly Majority Leader Crystal Peoples-Stokes.
Thank you. Good evening. Trust everybody is doing well. I want to thank you for the invite to speak very briefly to your listening audience. Certainly want to thank your sponsors and you for putting on this event that I think will be meaningful and impactful to people who get an opportunity to not just hear, but see what is going on. As you did mention, we are on the floor of the legislature as we speak in the process of debating very important bills that are important to both the sponsors who carry them, as well as to the people that we all represent. So I have a very brief moment to spend with you. I will say, however, that the power is not about a person, it's about a people. And quite honestly, as a result of the work that we have to do here at the state level, there are a lot of people whose opinions are important to our work, and we listen to them. And it's not just the 107 members of our Democratic Conference, it's the people from their constituencies that they represent. It's labor, it's business, it's not-for-profit. It's people who are organized around an issue. It's advocates. It's block clubs. It's neighborhood associations. All of these collective voices put together bring the power that we have to get the work done in the great state of Albany. And so it's an honor for me to be in the 244th legislative session in the history of this state and to serve as the majority leader. Under the leadership of, the Speaker, Carol Hastie. And so for me, it's been a fantastic experience. We have gotten a lot done. And yes, sir, we do have a lot more to do. Maybe that won't happen in the last 2 days, but there will be a 245th legislative session. And imminently it will be here and we will continue our work in progress. So thank you so much for the opportunity to speak to you and your listening audience. I'm perfectly willing to answer any questions you may have.
Well, Majority Leader, one thing that I would love to know, and I'm sure many in our audience, is how everything you just mentioned really applies to that really big legislation you passed earlier this year, the legalization of recreational marijuana. Just give us kind of a sense. I'm sure you've spoken about this so many times of how, this idea that was around for so many years to not just legalize recreational marijuana, but do it in a way that really made up for some of the inequities from prohibition, went from idea to actual getting the governor to sign it.
Well, as I stated earlier, it came with the support of a lot of people, people who organized themselves into coalitions of like-minded people around issues of justice, equity, environmental equity, social justice, economic justice. And so for me, this was not an opportunity to create a business for people to make a lot of money or millionaires to become billionaires. This was an opportunity to, save people's lives. I mean, literally the war on drugs has destroyed people's lives. It's destroyed not just the people, it's destroyed their communities, it's destroyed their children. It's had an impact on their parents and their grandparents, on the quality of the houses they live in and the neighborhoods that they live in. It literally has decimated the lives of thousands of people because they were locked up for a nonviolent crime. And then, quite honestly, in many cases, just learned how to become better criminals and ended up just recidivating again. leaving children alone with being raised in foster care systems, allowing our family court judicial system to grow like weed, basically. I mean, it just kept growing and kept growing because you kept locking up people's parents. And so for me, this is more about social justice and economic justice than it was about legalizing access to somebody to be in business. Now, given that it is the potential to be a business, it's a $3 billion business underground in the state of New York as we speak. Okay, so there are going to be opportunities for business. 50% goal that has to be from the communities that have been impacted. That's fair, although it should be more. And I wish we could say it would only be from communities that have been impacted. But honestly, you know, Mr. Williams, and I'm sure your listening audience knows as well, there are already people that are in this business. And many of them have been in my office, both in Buffalo and in Albany, trying to get access to New York because New York is a very large market. It's a big market. That is, you can't really stop that. But what you can do is say you need to have a goal of 50% equity. And then you can also say that, you know, 40% of the money that the state raised has to be invested into the lives of the people that's been destroyed, into the lives of their children, to the lives of their, you know, their great grandchildren. We're talking about generations of people who have been impacted. Now that could take forever and a day, but these folks are worth it. They suffered the consequence. Now all of a sudden people are able to become millionaires as a result of it. They should get some benefit. And so our legislation allows that to happen. So how do you make that happen? You're patient, for one, and you're willing to be repetitive in your message. And you have to be willing to stand by your principal position, because there were many opportunities to just say, oh, okay, we'll just take expungement and we'll move on. No, we need a lot more than expungement. After we get those records cleared, we need to create opportunity for people as well. And so, again, it's a repetitive message that you just keep saying. You won't move away from your principal position. And when you do that, at the end of the day, there will come a time when you'll get to have that vote taken. And for me, it was a great moment. It was a 7-hour debate, which was worth every single solitary minute of it. Clearly, you know, good legislation is one thing, but proper implementation is another thing. And so now we start to work on the implementation to make sure that the legislation will get, it will impact people in the manner in which it was desired.
Now, of course, you haven't always been majority leader of the assembly. You know, I'd imagine it's a little bit like herding cats from time to time, or so I hear, but maybe you could just tell me a little bit about the difference you felt as a legislator before you're a majority leader, and how you feel you have, just tell me a little bit about your position and how you think you've changed it, or perhaps not changed it compared to your predecessors.
Well, you know what, I will say this, it's not the first time I've been majority leader. I was elected as a county legislator in the county of Erie. And after 3 years of service there, I was selected as the majority leader in the Erie County Legislature. And so it's a similar job. Clearly, the Erie County Legislature is a lot smaller than 107 members, but basically, essentially, it's the same kind of work. Is you have to have the ability to communicate with people and allow them to communicate with you and move people towards the direction that our conference has come up with and decided to support. And that's what I do. I won't say that, you know, it's a more difficult job than just being a legislator. I think it's quite frankly the same. It's just at a bit of a different level. And so I have always had a reputation of being a consensus builder. I believe the more people talk, the more they're going to get to the same position. It may look a little different or sound a little different, but I think if you stop talking, you can't find a solution. So I think there's consensus in everything. And so I like to try to build that and engage people and move in that direction.
And I'm sure you're so busy, but maybe if you can indulge me with one more question, I would just really love to hear, what are your political inspirations? How did you enter politics? If I remember right, you didn't just grow up thinking that someday you would become the majority leader at the New York State Assembly. Just tell us a little bit about, what really sparked your interest, and how do you, stay inspired with so many important issues going along? I'm sure it's such a grind at times. How do you keep it up?
Well, I think my spirituality tells me that my task here on earth is to help people. And so this is a job as a legislator that allows you that opportunity to help people. A lot of people go into an elected office and they think, oh, now I'm the super great person. I'm so powerful. I got elected. No, you're really not. What you are is a public servant, and you're here to serve the people. And I think if we keep that frame in mind, then that's what we'll get. We'll get good service to people. And yeah, you're right. I didn't grow up thinking, okay, I'm going to one day to be the majority leader, or I didn't even grow up thinking I was going to one day be an elected official. Furthest thing from my mind. I grew up thinking I was going to be a teacher because my mother was. I went to school, I got a degree in that, and I didn't end up being a teacher because, quite frankly, I didn't like the system of public education then. And quite honestly, I don't really care that much for it now. I'm not sure that it's doing its best job in educating, particularly students of color. Um, so I ended up working, going to grad school to get a degree in higher ed because I'm thinking, well, perhaps I'll leave New York and I'll work somewhere in some college or the other. While doing that, I took a part-time job at Citizen Action of New York, just to have some resources while I'm in school in the evenings, get my graduate work done. And it was through my work in Citizen Action that I saw that people can be empowered around issues. And when people get empowered around issues, things could change in their lives. And so I spent a lot of time organizing um, around the Hazard Standard Communication Right to Know Act, around lead poisoning prevention, around actually getting stop signs put in people's neighborhoods, stopping medical waste incinerators from being in my own neighborhood at a hospital, engaging people in the process of shutting down stores that were not running good business in our communities. And so you begin to see what happens when you organize people around issues. And you also begin to see that people that are elected, they don't have all the answers. And sometimes they do need a citizenry to put together what the solution should be and bring that to them. I, as the regional director of Citizen Action, I didn't start out as the regional director. I started as a part-time organizer, and I ended up as the regional director for the whole Western New York area. We were able to get legislation passed with my predecessor, the former Assembly Member Deputy Speaker Arthur Eve, and former Senator Dale Volker passed legislation to require the state to keep records of where children live who have lead poisoning. That's legislation we were able to get passed without being elected. So again, it showed me my work at Citizen Action, my work in the community, my organizing, that you have to put people in a place where they understand you can change things in your life for the better. And generally, you're going to either have to go and talk to one elected official or the other at one level of government or the other to make that happen. And so when there became a vacancy at the county level of government and people said, well, why don't you think about it? It's like, well, I'm not interested in that. And after much more thought, and quite frankly, a lot of persuasion, it occurred to me, well, you're already doing the work anyway. So if you can come up with the ideas and take it to somebody else to have them move it forward in a governmental structure, then maybe you can actually do the job yourself. And so I decided to run, and I did. And I won, and by the way, I only won by 25 votes. But you only need one more in order to be successful. So the rest is history.
And I'm going to squeeze in one last one just because we got 2 days left of the legislative session. Are you going to be able to get it all done by Thursday at midnight?
Yes, and everything that we don't get done, we'll get done in the 245th legislative session.
Well, thank you so much for joining us today, Majority Leader, on such a very busy day. Such a pleasure.
You are so welcome. You all take care and stay safe and healthy.
And in lieu of audience applause, I'll, of course, give a little clap here to the very honorable Majority Leader, Crystal Peoples-Stokes of Western New York. And now, I would have to say, I've been covering state politics for 3 years now, and every now and again, I get a chance to run into some of these lawmakers in the halls of the Capitol while they do rallies or press conferences or anything. And during COVID, usually just moving to and fro. And I just have to say the Majority Leader is about as serious a legislator as it gets. Although I think once I made her laugh with a little joke, but I'm not quite sure, maybe some other day for sure. But it really has been a pleasure. And, you know, Albany has just changed so much during my own time. It's only been 3 years. You know, when I came in, people were still kind of used to Republican Senate, Democratic Assembly. And then I came in early 2019 and all these bills just get passed, bam, 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 the Reproductive Health Act, voting reforms. I remember saying to people, wow, state government is just so functional. Just big historic bills passed every day. And I think people would give a laugh from time to time. But, you know, one reason why it changed so much was not only because the Assembly under Speaker Carl Hastie and Majority Leader Peoples-Stokes was really pushing legislation, but also this incoming class of lawmakers elected in the 2018 elections that helped tip the balance of power in the state Senate for the first time in a decade. And yes, it was a progressive changeover, but it was also a little bit generational. A lot of millennial lawmakers were entering the state Senate. I think there might have been 1 or 2 of them up to that point, but perhaps not any, but there certainly are a lot now. And one of them who really made a name for herself in that first year in 2019 and has kept it going through 2020 and now 2021, passing so many bills with a great impact on the state of New York is none other than State Senator Alessandra Biaggi, who's got something to say about what it's like to work with power, wield a little bit of power in Albany. Senator?
Thank you very much, Zach. I really appreciate that introduction, and I am very grateful to be here today. For those, again, who don't know who I am, I'm Alessandra Biaggi. I'm the state senator that represents New York's 34th state Senate district. That number usually means nothing to anybody. Sometimes it doesn't even mean something to the people that I represent, because our districts are very gerrymandered, and hopefully we'll be fixing that soon. But the 34th state Senate district covers parts of the Bronx and Westchester counties. And so I get to represent a very unique district, a very challenging district, a very diverse district. And every single day there are things that I get to hear about and really grapple with that have made me a better leader for the district. Because when you represent a district that is so different in so many ways, it really does enable you to start finding the ways where there can be synchronicities, where you can really spark empathy. And so it's been a really interesting journey so far, but we'll get back to that in a minute. I really do want to thank City and State for inviting me to give remarks in tonight's webinar, also for recognizing me on this year's Albany Power 100 list. To be recognized as an influential leader in Albany is an honor. It is also a responsibility that I take very seriously. And so I thank you all again for that. I also want to take a moment to acknowledge and also to thank those that I get to share this space with every day, whether it is literally in the chamber or in the legislative body. I really am honored to be here alongside the Majority Leader, Crystal Peoples-Stokes. Her leadership, and really it is steadfast leadership and determination. And she also mentioned patience, which I know that her and Senator Krueger had to have in order to make sure that we got done what we got done this year. But that collectively has guided New York State to finally legalize marijuana and to pass the MRTA this year. When I first learned about how long it took, and I learned that it was 7 years to even come to the floor for a vote, it really gave me pause, because it takes time to make transformational change, and getting it right is more important than just getting something done. And I think that's one of the best examples of that this year, and really in the entire time that I've been here. I'm also excited to be here with my colleague and my friend, my partner in so many different fights, Assemblymember Ron Kim, who I enjoy working with. He has been a North Star this past year in the fight for justice for those who have lost their loved ones to COVID-19 in nursing homes. And I would not have been able to do what we did without him. And really, most importantly, to all of the viewers who are here today, part of the conversation to reflect on Albany's accomplishments, also to acknowledge the work that we have left to do, because it's really important that we continue to have those conversations and to also hold leaders like myself accountable to continue to carry that ball down the field, the proverbial ball down the field, to make progress. In 2019, when I came to Albany, as Zach mentioned, I came alongside a group of newly elected officials who were determined to not only be here to speak up and speak out, but really to transform Albany as everybody knew it and knows it. I really believe that I was elected to this seat on a message of transparency, of good government. I have really made it my mission to not only always speak up and speak truth to power, but also to fight to make Albany more accessible to New Yorkers and really to change the perception of Albany, because the most important thing that we can do is allow for people people that we represent, but really all New Yorkers, to understand what their state capital is doing for them. And I think that because of the reputation that precedes what Albany was, it's hard sometimes to bring people along, but that's also our job, is to really transform it and to enroll people in the process. Like every single one of us, I think there's not a leader in our state government or a legislative branch of government that was not tested when our entire world was turned upside down and confronted with COVID-19. Last March, all of our legislative ideas and our priorities essentially shifted like overnight with the snap of a finger. That was very, very, very challenging for many reasons. Number one, because it was something that none of us have ever dealt with before. Number two, there was momentum that we were building from 2019 that we wanted to continue. And number three, because of the seriousness of what a public health crisis brings along with it. And so what we concluded and what we have really seen is that this pandemic exacerbated everything that we all knew, that many of us have come here to fix and to change and to transform in the system. It really exacerbated what was broken and broke a dam in a lot of different ways, but it also shed light on the cracks in our systems of government that we really could not ignore anymore. And I think when I say that, I think the most important part of that is that, some of our executive leadership, whether it's our city or our state, couldn't ignore it anymore. And that, I think, is one of the silver linings of the pandemic. If there is any, that is one of them, that the issues that, many put to the back burner are now at the front of our agendas. And so at that time, I think, we all had a choice. Either we were, just going to get through this, put Band-Aids on everything, and then wait until it all goes back to like this normal that everybody, hopes for, or we were going to really address a lot of the root problems head on and push for these substantial changes to how our government works to make sure that every community would really never be as vulnerable as it was during the beginning of the pandemic again. Many of us, in fact, I think that the collective legislature chose the latter. I certainly chose the latter. My district in the Bronx suffered severely. When we look at the number of deaths and the number of infection rates to this day, the Bronx has been the place in the United States that has been hit the worst. It's probably not a surprise as to why, but years and years and years of austerity and underfunding have really caused a lot more suffering, I think, during this pandemic than in other places. And so it continues to be that way. Because of that, I have felt this serious urgency of the crisis to push me not only to be fearless, but to do things I don't think that any of us could have imagined doing, to become food distributors and to help our constituents bury their loved ones and identify them in morgues, and to really just roll my sleeves up and have a can-do attitude about whatever came through the door. And it was, it continues to be very trying. It was incredibly traumatizing. I know that all of us have experienced that. I think it's okay. And I think it's actually very important that we all acknowledge that we all did suffer a trauma and continue to, whether we've lost a loved one, whether we ourselves were sick, whether we really were just shocked by what was going on, or whether it was for another reason. The collective suffering is probably one of the most intense experiences of all of our lives. And so what I really have learned from that, and what I continue to just double down on is that anytime that we are in a position as somebody, as a legislator, as an executive, or otherwise, it really is incumbent upon us to take risks and to fight for change in a way that we haven't done before, because people's lives are literally counting on it. And so that has been, for me, one of the guiding lights of my time during this pandemic. We were able to do something very monumental, which was passing the Healthy Terminals Act, which allowed for airport workers to have access to affordable healthcare. Many airport workers who really are part of the critical infrastructure of our city and our state not only got sick during the pandemic, but also lost their lives. And so in many ways, this was, I believe, one of, the least that we can do, the least that these airlines could do is to provide health insurance, because again, we were in a global and are in a global health pandemic. So that was one of the positives of what we were able to push during the pandemic. And we continue to do a lot because we have been made aware of a lot of issues that continue to remain today. I think that when we fast forward a little bit, one of the most important decisions I think I made this year was to be one of the first legislators to call on our governor or executive to resign. I think that, if you look on, it looks maybe easy to do that, but calling for the person in our state's highest office in New York in the middle of a global pandemic to resign is not an easy thing to do. And it was not a hasty decision to have been made. I understood the implications of changing leadership during a crisis. I understand the risks that are involved in those kinds of things. But I think that when you look at the collective failures, specifically with regard to our health department and our nursing homes, which continues to be a very difficult issue that many families are facing, these things are dangerous. And to me, as I was watching in my district, District 34, which, just to make another point here, I represent the state Senate district with the most nursing homes of any other state Senate district. So this issue was exacerbated almost probably tenfold. It was really important because there were these desperate cries for relief. And so that, for me, was a breaking point. I think that during the height of the pandemic, the governor absolutely has made and continues to this day make people feel safe. I think that we have to acknowledge that and also be really fair about that. There was an opportunity for him, however, to play a competent leader on television, to take the pandemic seriously. It brought a lot of people comfort. But, at the time that was important because these are qualities we're not getting from the White House. And so again, while he did some things well, there were decisions that were made that had real consequences, including life. And so it's hard for people, I know, to hold this discordant belief in their mind that at the same time that this person that you're watching makes you feel safe was also making decisions that were not only bad, but really riddled with misconduct. I think it's important that we, as citizens of New York, as people in New York, as leaders in New York, are able to start thinking about people and issues with nuance, and also be able to hold two contradictory points in our mind at the same time, because that is what is so. And so anyway, I think ultimately all of those things really, in addition to the governor, what I felt was just abusing his power. Again, we don't have to go into all the details about that. That was what led me to call for his resignation, as well as, of course, we know the 9 very brave individuals who have come forward to make assertions of sexual harassment. That is also something that led me to the decision that I made. It is one of the reasons that I ran for office. It's one of the things that I continue to champion. It really matters. And it matters not only because when we change laws, we make sure that we send a signal to people that we are here taking things seriously, but because sometimes the culture changes first and then the law changes after. But sometimes the law can change first and shift the culture too. And both things need to happen regularly, and also in a way that I think gives people hope that the people in office are here to not only keep them safe, but to keep pushing that progress down the field. And I think that when I look at what we've done in 2019, I'm incredibly proud of it. We are changing the culture around sexual harassment and abuse, but these are not things done alone. These are things done with individuals like the Sexual Harassment Working Group and other members of the legislature, and a whole group of people who started to say, you know what, this is really important and this is the time to do it, and New York is not going to be left behind. I continue to have a zero tolerance policy on this issue. It's one of the things that I'm driven to do this work every day because of. And I think that we are in a moment now where we are in the final 48 hours of our legislative session, and we have an opportunity also to continue to carry that progress forward, because 2020 absolutely took us off our momentum course for this work, especially with regard to sexual harassment. One of my top priorities in the final days of session is probably something that you've seen me tweet about, or have an Instagram post about, or just speak about, because I feel so incredibly passionate about this. And this is closing the voluntary intoxication loophole. Our current law, our current penal code, treats victims of sexual assault differently. Whether they were voluntarily intoxicated at the time that they were assaulted or involuntarily intoxicated. And so this is obviously just one bill from a long list of survivor-centered bills that are really important for New York State to pass if we truly want to support and continue the work that we've done, but continue to support survivors of sex crimes unequivocally. But again, I have to just go back to this. Transforming our workplace culture takes time. And passing legislation that centers the needs of survivors and expands protections for workers is really something that I think will be an issue on our plate in perpetuity. I don't think that these are issues that are going away, because I think we can continue to make our laws better. Why? Because when you think about our entire system of laws, our laws were written by only a very narrow sample set of the population. I mean, go back in history and also walk the halls of Albany. You'll see the paintings on the walls. What you'll see in those paintings is a lot of men, a lot of white men. And it doesn't mean that that's a necessarily bad thing, but it doesn't actually represent the entire state of New York. And so now we are taking this opportunity with this incredible, diverse legislature to say, well, we're going to have the voices of women and non-binary individuals, and also the LGBTQ community and different religions, and all people who are here now to really have our laws reflect the realities of a majority of New Yorkers. And so I continue to believe that transforming our laws takes time. But the truth is, we know this. New York will never be able to lead with integrity or with transparency if we don't continue to hold accountable, not just make laws, but hold accountable those who are also in any office, but breaking the rules or the norms or the laws and abusing their power. And so we can pass all the laws that we want, but we have to hold ourselves and our leaders accountable too. And so that leads me to my final point before we go, I pass it on probably to my really good friend, Assemblymember Kim, and that's with regard to JCOPE and ethics and our commitment to good government. I think that the reason, I know that the reason why I wanted to chair the Committee on Ethics and Internal Governance is because I really want to take a light and shed it on the darkest places and spaces of Albany, because a transparent government is a government that actually works. The Capitol, as I mentioned earlier, has been a place riddled with corruption. And this last year, I think, showcased how desperate we all are for an independent ethics body that is holding people accountable, our leaders, for their actions. I think that since the creation of JCOPE, there has been a deep concern regarding JCOPE's neutrality, their ability to act as an independent body, and really the close ties that it has to the governor, which allows for, and really it's because of its nature, it's just very partisan just from its creation. And so what this moment calls for is really an immediate and structural reform to make sure that there are very clear, very independent ways to investigate and to observe and to take a look at any kind of ethical violations, and then ultimately hold our leaders accountable. This session, I introduced and passed a JCOPE omnibus bill in the Senate to address some of the fundamental issues. I really think this is important, but this is just a stopgap, because the long-term goal should be Senator Krueger's constitutional amendment to create an entirely new ethics body, because again, without meaningful transparency and accountability, New York State really will never be able to end this cycle of corruption and abuse that plagues Albany. And as a result, we really will never be able to reach our highest potential as a state. And if there's one thing that I know, it is that New York, at least to me, is inevitable. And what does that mean? It means that I have so much optimism for our state and what is possible here, for what our state rep only in the United States of America to all 49 other states, but also to the rest of the world. The world watches New York, whether we're doing something good, whether we're doing something that is groundbreaking or transformational. People are watching us. And that means that we have an even higher level of scrutiny, but also opportunity and responsibility to take the rest of the world to a higher height, whether that's in Albany with the state legislature, whether that's with our congressional delegation in DC, whether that's our executives in New York City or other cities or in the governor's office. And it's also our judiciary, because I think sometimes we forget that we have a third branch of government also that can make transformational change simply by the way that they interpret the laws, making sure that we have individual rights restored for people. So I've said a lot tonight. I'm sure that there's more I could say if I had the time, but I know I'm out of time. I think that ultimately, we do not want Albany and our governing to go back to its old ways and habits. We have come too far. We have worked too hard. New Yorkers also deserve the best leadership that they can absolutely get. Leadership that will steer us into this next chapter after COVID, a chapter where we can address inequities and injustice head on and not be afraid, be fearless. One where every decision that is made in Albany is for working families, for our most vulnerable communities. And as legislators and as public servants, I really think that if we're not using our positions to influence and to better people's lives, which means taking risks, advocating for ideas that have never been done before, standing up against these old ways, if we aren't doing everything we can to make New Yorkers' lives better, then we have to ask ourselves the question, what are we doing here at all? And so this is the question that motivates me every day. It's guided me through this turbulent and difficult year, and it will continue to motivate me even after I log off here and we go back to the floor to vote for more bills, because we are still in session as well. But I think New York can continue to work towards a future of equality, of justice, of integrity, and again, continue to lead, because everyone is watching us, and that feels very exciting because there's so much more to do.
Well, you gave us a lot to think about there, Senator. Thank you so much. I think that really went over so much of what's going on, especially with the younger generation of legislators that have made such a difference, love them or hate them, in the state legislature since the 2018 elections. And as President Lyndon Johnson once said, what the hell is power for if you're not prepared to use big things when you have a chance? In his case, the Voting Rights Act, and in your case, really changing the ethical climate, as us journalists like to say, in Albany. So thank you so much. I really appreciate you taking some time on such a busy day. And actually what you said about representation in power is a great segue to our next speaker, Assemblymember Ron Kim, who, when I came to Albany, one difference between when I came and what I've seen now is just how many more Asian American lawmakers there really are, which, is so important at this time when we've seen so many violent attacks against Asian people across the state, across the country. And I think now where there's maybe a half dozen or so AAPI lawmakers, but I would say that at the time when the assembly member really, his public profile really went up when he went toe to toe with the governor back in February, he might have been just one of a handful of lawmakers that were really willing to speak their mind of what they thought about his handling of the pandemic, nursing homes, and so much more. I'll let the man speak for himself. Assemblymember Ron Kim, thank you so much for joining us.
Hello, everyone. Thank you so much for the introduction, Zach. It is truly a privilege and honor to speak with you tonight. I've been a fan of the city and state staff writers, the production teams, and all the creators. It's no surprise that the publication is the most reliable place to read up on New York politics. So again, thank you for this honor and giving me the opportunity to share some thoughts with you tonight. Let me take a moment to also thank my esteemed colleagues who preceded me tonight. Majority Leader Peoples-Stokes, with whom I've been serving in the Assembly for over 8 years now, as well as State Senator Alessandra Biaggi. They were two of the most highly respected lawmakers who make things happen in our respective legislative bodies, and I'm lucky to share this virtual stage with them. As you're aware, Senator Biaggi had mentioned earlier, so Senator and I were in the trenches earlier this year working through the nursing home crisis. We spent months pushing back on the governor's near blanket corporate immunity for nursing home executives, and we were able to fully repeal it in March this year. I saw firsthand her steady leadership, her thoughtfulness, and her tenacity. I like to say she's match fit, meaning put a challenge in front of her and she'll jump right in. No need for extra warm-up time. And I feel so fortunate to have forged a partnership with her during a truly tumultuous time. So thank you, Senator Biaggi, for your leadership. I realize we've been on hundreds, maybe thousands of Zoom calls by now, but this is the first time I'm actually delivering a keynote on Zoom, and it's also the first time I'm speaking at a city and state power event. So I thought, that's right. So I thought long and hard about what I want to say, and I came up with 3 words to summarize my entire speech. Those 3 words are always punch up. Always punch up. You can put in a hashtag or a bumper sticker, and it's easy to remember. Always punch up. So I grew up in a military family. My dad was a Vietnam veteran and a Marine. He was one of 3 boys, all served honorably in the military. One uncle was a Navy SEAL, the other a U.S. Army captain. He was the uncle who died in a nursing home just over a year ago. As an only child of immigrant parents, and Asian American immigrant parents, I was reinforced with the strict code of conduct as a key feature in my upbringing. My dad didn't care so much about getting straight A's, playing the piano, or getting into an Ivy League college, the stereotypical tiger Asian parents' values. Instead, he filled the day with tools for becoming a decent man, one in which character was destiny. As a teen, I was filled with restless angst. So I used to get into a lot of scraps when I was growing up. And I remember the one piece of advice my dad gave me when I got into trouble. If you're going to fight, always fight someone bigger and stronger than you. There's no honor in beating someone you know you can beat up. Always punch up. So I think about what that looks like now as an adult who practices nonviolence and as a lawmaker. What do the fights we pick say about our character? Our society places value over certain types of identities, certain kinds of people. There's an undeniable social hierarchy or ladder that we are unconsciously ordered onto. The dominant culture puts primacy on whiteness, maleness, class, youth. Those are the traits that traditionally land you at the top of the ladder. Non-white, poor, old, and even disabled are ordered further down below. As legislators, it is our job to use our power to pull the groups up from the bottom of the ladder, to step into the proper fights so that the life experiences and stories of our most marginalized communities are heard. That is how we dismantle systems of oppression. That is how we dismantle the hierarchy ladder. Once the rungs of the ladder fall away, all the systems that keep us fighting one another will as well. There was no obvious place to watch the value system play out than watching what occurred during COVID at the nursing homes. An executive who used his emergency powers to direct COVID positive patients into unprepared nursing homes and infect our most vulnerable population while also shielding and protecting his donor class from culpability. Our governor, who is at the top of the hierarchy, used his position of power to cause the death of thousands of nursing home residents. Whether unconscious or conscious, there was a belief system that rationalized that these older adults living out the last phase of their lives were somewhere toward the bottom of the social ladder. So their lives became less valuable. He placed the higher value on his donor class and used his power to protect their interest rather than the people who depended on his better judgment. So how can we let this act um, possibly go unpunished? Our elders needed our voice, our privilege of power to pull them up, and in all honesty, we failed them. So our job as legislators, as people in power, is to pull groups from the bottom of the ladder on up, to decenter ourselves in order for the life experiences and stories of others to have a chance to be heard. That is the path toward dismantling the system. It is incumbent upon all of us to recognize our position on the ladder so we don't unwittingly cause more harm. It doesn't matter how marginalized you are down the ladder. Every wrong carries a certain amount of privilege and a certain amount of domination. That's why we must interrogate our own reactions to being called out from the outside so we don't repeat the same tactics of domination toward others. It's entirely human for us to respond in ways that make us protective and deflect our complicity because we have not strengthened the muscle of our resilience. However, shifting the direction of the interrogation so it doesn't point at us would not help break up the systems of power we claim to want to change in the first place. Instead, we must be open to sitting in the discomfort when we're being named of our complicity. Whether you are a moderate corporate Democrat, a progressive, or a conservative, you may inevitably reach enough status where you find yourself at a choice point. Always choose to punch up. That is where your privilege and power is most needed. Now, I'm not here tonight advocating for people to become more confrontational or pick fights. In an ideal world, we wouldn't need to because our relationships with those who are above us on the economic, political, and social ladder will be driven by partnerships and collaborations. But that is not the world that we live in. We have too many individuals in positions of power that spend way too much time and resources punching down to maintain their status. So my message today to New York's top 100 powerful individuals is simple. Always punch up, whether that be while you work, whether you're working in the public sector or private sector, a partner in a law firm, a president of a union. Always use your power to punch up. And if you find yourself constantly putting people in their place and think you're always the smartest person in the room, it's time to let go. And if you find yourself yearning for constant approval, acceptance, and validation, it's time to let go. If you find yourself willing to use your race, gender, sexuality to suppress other marginalized and vulnerable people, it's time to let go. What I'm asking everyone to consider is to become mindful of your tactics. Make sure you're not replicating tactics of domination by punching down. Reach out, lend a hand, encourage others onto your rung of the ladder to join you. Punch up instead of punching down. Thank you all.
Thank you so much, Assembly Member. Really appreciate it. Let's all keep that in mind. Punching up. That's what Ron Kim has to say. And I would be hard pressed to find somebody who has taken on what might be deemed a much stronger person in state politics than the Assembly Member. Agree with him, don't agree with him. He certainly, went toe to toe with the governor back in February. Thanks so much. And now it's time to get to the power list, the reading of the names. So I'm going to start from number 100 and read all my way to number 1. And we're going to see Ron Kim, Majority Leader Crystal Peoples-Stokes, and State Senator Alessandra Biaggi all along the way. And maybe I'll throw in a little bit of those insights that I've garnered in my 3 years here at the Capitol along the way. So number 100, this is the guy that has a lot of potential to move up in state politics if everything goes well for him. That is Representative Lee Zeldin, who is the leading GOP gubernatorial contender for 2022. At number 99, also someone that's been known to punch up and has actually had a pretty good run this year in terms of making the Democrats do what he wants. That's State Assembly Minority Leader Will Barclay. And at number 98 is his Republican colleague in the other chamber, State Senate Minority Leader Robert Ort. And at number 97, the dynamic duo of data, let's see if I can say that 10 times in a row, of the Empire Center for Public Policy. That's E.J. McMahon and Bill Hammond, both of whom do enormously important research that I know myself and other reporters have really benefited from, especially in analyzing the COVID-19 pandemic and the state response thereof. And at number 96, we got Mike Durant, Food Industry Alliance of New York State. And at number 95, Patrick Purcell, Executive Director of the New York State Laborers, Employers, Cooperation, and Education Trust. There we go. And at number 94, you might remember her from the Attorney General's race a few years back. That's Lisa Eve, Vice President of State Government Affairs at Verizon. And at number 93, Skip Pieseltelli, Counselor and Senior Advisor at CMW. And at number 92, we got Tonio Burgos and John Charlson, CEO and Albany Director, respectively, at TBA. And at number 91, another person with perhaps some gubernatorial ambitions, Steve Ballone, Suffolk County Executive. All right, now we're 10 down, 90 to go. Number 90, Matthew Cohen, President and CEO of the Long Island Association. And at number 89, my colleague in the Legislative Correspondence Association, Jesse McKinley of the New York Times. And at 89, Hazel Dukes, President of the New York chapter of the NCAA and a former president of the national organization. And at number 87, Carlo Cicera, President and CEO of the New York Building Congress. They certainly know how to throw their weight around in state politics. And number 86, Rebecca Byland, campaign manager at the Invest in Our New York Coalition. They scored a big victory back in the budget, helping to raise taxes on the wealthy. And at number 95, looks like we got a trio, Jose Lopez, Arlenis Morel, and Theo Oshiro of Make the Road, New York. Number 84, Helene Weinstein, chairwoman of the Assembly Ways and Means Committee. Anything has to do with state funding, it's got to go through her committee. Number 83, Kenneth Ridditt, lobbyist at Ridditt Associates. Number 82, Sonia Osario, President of New York, New York, National Organization of Women chapter here in New York State. And at number 81, Sandra Dorley, President of the District Attorneys Association of the State of New York. And at 80, Sochi Namika, State Director of the Working Families Party. And at number 79, Eric Linzer, Head of the New York Health Plan Association. And at number 78, really friendly guy. If you ever are in the state capitol, make sure to say hi. That's Blake Washington, Secretary of the Assembly Ways and Means Committee. And at number 77, one of those people is enormously influential, but by no means a household name, but nonetheless, number 77, most powerful in the state, Lou Ann Cicone, Assembly Policy Secretary. And at number 76, Gil Quinones, President and CEO of the New York Power Authority. Number 75, Rich Bamberger and Maggie Moran of Kivett. At number 74, Beth Finkel of the New York State Director at AARP. Ooh, we're getting down there. At number 73, another enormously influential person in the state Senate, Chantel Smith, Chief Counsel and Chief of Staff of the State Senate Democrats. Number 72, Jeff Pollack, Founding Partner and President of Global Strategy Group. And at number 71, Assembly Member Yuli New. And at number 70, Dennis Traynor of the Communication Workers of America. 30 down, 70 to go. At number 69, Camille Joseph Goldman of TBD Charter. And at number 68, you might have seen her on television a few times, that's Susan Arbetter, host of Capitol Tonight. And at 67, Patrick Jenkins, founder of Patrick B. Jenkins and Associates. And at number 76, Sean Doolan, government relations at Hinman Straub. And at number 65, James Capolino of Capolino and Company. And at number 64, Rick Ostroff, of President and CEO of Ostroff Associates. Ooh, number 63, we got another state senator. That's State Senator Robert Jackson of Manhattan. And next up, we got a whole bunch right here. We got Julia Salazar, Jabari Bridgeport, Farah Sufran Forrest, Zoran Mamdani, and Marcella Matinas, all of the state assembly, except for State Senator Julia Salazar, of course. Together, they are the Socialist Caucus here in Albany. And at number 61, another biggie in the state Senate, Todd Kaminsky of Long Island, who also chairs the environmental committee in his chamber. And at number 60, where are we at? Number 60, State Senator and Chair of the Judiciary Committee, Brad Hoylman. Number 59, Mike Elmendorf, President and CEO of Associated General Contractors of New York State. And at number 59, Mary Sullivan, President of the CSEA, which represents state employees, of course. And at number 58, Wayne Spence, President of PEF. At number 57, someone who really had a big hand in helping the state respond to the COVID-19 pandemic. That's B. Grouse, President of the Healthcare Association of New York State. At number 56, Charles Levine, Chair of the Assembly Judiciary Committee, which is of course conducting an ongoing impeachment investigation of Governor Andrew Cuomo. And at number 55, Elkin Ambrowitz and Rita Glavin, who are the governor's defense attorneys. At number 54, Tony Utano of TWU. Number 53, we got the dynamic duo of health committees, State Senate Health Committee Chair Gustavo Rivera and Assembly Health Committee Chair Richard Gottfried, who of course is the godfather of single payer here in New York State, sponsored the bill for about 3 decades now. And at number 52, Heather Brichetti, President and CEO of the Business Council of New York State. We're halfway done, folks, halfway. At number 50, Pat Kane and Judy Sheridan Gonzalez, Executive Director and President, respectively, of the New York State Nurses Association. At number 49, Eric Gertler, President and CEO of Empire State Development. And at 48, Andrew Pallotta, President of New York State United Teachers, which represents teachers across the state. At number 47, it's State Democratic Party Chair Jay Jacobs. And at 46, Harold Eisland and Samir Najam of Greenberg Triad. At 45, Giorgio DeRosa and Emily Gisk, partners at Bolton St. John's. And at 44, David Weinrob, principal of Brown and Weinrob. Ooh, at number 43, someone who repeatedly has topped the list of highest paid lobbyists in the whole state, Suri Kasserer. She must be doing something right. She's founder of Kasserer LLC. And at number 42, Linda Lacewell, Superintendent of the State Department of Financial Services. And at 42, June Kim and Ann Clark, independent investigators of Governor Andrew Cuomo. And at number 40, James Whelan, President of the Real Estate Board of New York. And at number 39, Neil Quatra, Founder and CEO, Metropolitan Strategies. Now at number 38, someone we just heard from a little bit ago, that's State Senate Ethics Committee Chair, Alessandra Biaggi. And at number 37, Evan Stefisky of the Parkside Group. At number 36, Richard Morocco, President of the Hotels Trades Council. And at number 35, another dynamic legislative duo, this time of labor, we got State Senate Labor Committee Chair, Jessica Ramos. And we also have Assembly Member Carmen de la Rosa. At number 36, At number 34, Gary LaBarbera, President of the Building and Construction Trades Council of Greater New York. And at number 33, Lester Young, Chancellor of the New York State Board of Regents. And at 32, Felix Matos Rodriguez, Chancellor of the CUNY Board of Trustees. And at number 31, just heard from him, Assembly Member Ron Kim. And at number 30, State Senate Finance Committee Chair Liz Kruger. And at 29, Mario Salento, President of the New York State AFL-CIO. And at number 28, Donna Frescatori, State Medicaid Director. And at number 27, it's Chief Judge of the State of New York, Janet DeFiore. At number 26, Kyle Bragg, President of 32BGA SEIU. And at number 25, Kirsten Gillibrand, U.S. Senator. And at number 24, Catherine Wild, President and CEO of the Partnership for New York City. And at number 23, if you were at our last event, our Queens Power 100, you might have heard him, one of our keynote speakers. That's Rick Cotton, Executive Director of the Port Authority of New York and New Jersey. And at number 22, Pat Foy, Chairman and CEO of the MTA, who will be moving on very soon to Empire State Development. And at number 21, the money man of Albany, Robert Mujica, State Budget Director. And at number 20, could it be Michael Mulgrew, President of UFT, which represents teachers down in New York City. And at number 19, one of the most ubiquitous people in state politics, Lieutenant Governor Kathy Hochul. And at number 18, New York City Mayor Bill de Blasio. And just ahead of him at number 17 is State Health Commissioner Howard Zucker. Again, down there, folks, number 16 is Northwell Health CEO Michael Dowling. And number 15, one of the most powerful labor leaders around, George Gresham, President of 1199 SEIU. Number 14 is Ken Rasky, President of the Greater New York Health Association. And at number 13 is SUNY Chancellor and longtime Cuomo World Insider, Jim Malatras. And just ahead of him at number 12 is Elizabeth Garvey, Counsel to the Governor and Special Advisor. And at number 11, Betty Rosa, State Education Commissioner. And at number 10, who could it be? Assembly Majority Leader Crystal Peoples-Stokes, who helped kick things off earlier today. Getting down there, number 9, Deputy Senate Majority Leader Michael Gianaris of Queens. And at number 8 is the longest tenured statewide official. Who could it be? State Comptroller Thomas DiNapoli, obviously. And at number 7, Secretary to the Governor Melissa DeRosa, the highest ranked staffer in state government. And at number 6, I think we all know who this guy is and what he does. That, of course, is President Joe Biden. And at number 5, the Majority Leader of Majority Leaders, U.S. Senator Charles Schumer. Getting down there, we got 4 left. I'm going to make this as dramatic as possible, obviously. That is Assembly Speaker Carl Hastie. And at number 3, Andrea Stewart Cousins, State Senate Majority Leader. We got 2 names left. Who could be 2? Who could be 1? Who have we left out? 2 big names. At number 2, moving down just 1 slot from last year when he was indisputably the most powerful person in New York State. That, of course, is Governor Andrew Cuomo. And now, roll, the most powerful person in state politics, that's State Attorney General Letitia James. And that right there is the 2021 Albany Power 100 list in all of its entirety. In lieu of audience applause, I'll just give a little clap right there. All of them have enormous influence in state politics. Doesn't matter if they're number 100 or number 1 or number 50, they all have a role to play. And we're running out of time, but I do want to just give a shout out once again to our wonderful sponsor, Spectrum, that helped us put on this great event and helps us here at City and State do what we do. And if you want to keep the fun going, keep the conversations going, please join us next week on Monday, June 14th at 2 p.m. as we're hosting the second part of our Women in Government series focused on Juneteenth, also sponsored by Spectrum. Registration for those events is free and can be found on our website, City and State NY as in New York.com, and in the chat that should be at the bottom of your screen. And then also, if you really want to know about unheralded biggies in state politics, join us for our New York Nonprofit Media annual OpCon webinar that has everything to say about streamlining operations for nonprofits who, of course, do so much stuff on behalf of both the New York City and, of course, the state governments. And then finally, June 23rd, this is a biggie. Join us at 5 p.m. to celebrate the 2021 Pride Power 100 list. Is it free? Of course. You can register right on our website at cityandstateny.com. Once again, a great shout out to our wonderful audience, our wonderful keynote speakers, including Majority Leader Crystal Peoples-Stokes, State Senators Alessandra Biaggi, and of course, Assembly Member Ron Kim. I'm Zach Williams, Senior State Politics Reporter at City and State. Thanks again for watching. Catch you next time.